Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Have you ever truly stopped to consider how you experience the world around you? I mean, not just what you see or touch, but the actual intricate mechanisms. The way your mind, well, actively constructs everything you encounter. Imagine looking at a familiar coffee cup. Maybe it's sitting on your desk right now. You see its particular shade of blue, maybe feel the ceramic cool against your fingertips. You sense its weight as you lift it. But how do all those individual sensations, the visual input, the tactile pressure, the proprioceptive feedback, how do they come together to form the coherent cup that you know? And maybe even deeper, how does your experience of the cup relate to my cup? Or, how does it relate to the cup as just a purely scientific object described by physics? It's a deeper question than it first appears, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It really is. And what's truly fascinating here is that there's a profound philosophical approach, it's called phenomenology, that offers us a rigorous, almost meticulous way to explore precisely these kinds of questions. It's not just about describing the world as we find it, It's about delving into the givenness of things. That means how objects, events, even our own inner lives are presented to us, how they're constituted within our consciousness. We're talking about revealing the intricate layers of meaning and experience that fundamentally construct our reality. We're trying to go beyond simply describing the world, you see. We want to understand the very foundations of our conscious life within it.
Okay, so our mission today then is to really do a deep dive into phenomenology. We're going to explore its fundamental ideas, its core philosophical insights, drawing from some, foundational texts in the field. But this isn't about dates or biographies, right? It's about the raw, powerful ideas. Ideas that challenge our everyday assumptions and help us understand the essence of perception, the nature of consciousness, and, the constitution of reality itself.
Exactly. We're offering a pathway into how we experience and make sense of our world, both individually and collectively. And this deep dive is really for you, the curious learner, who wants to get a quick yet thorough understanding. Hopefully, you'll experience some genuine aha moments without feeling, overwhelmed by a complex jargon. We'll try to distill these profound insights into, let's say, actionable knowledge, giving you a shortcut to being well-informed about a truly groundbreaking way of looking at existence.
Sounds great. So where do we start? How about with constituting the world of material things? That seems foundational.
An excellent starting point. Let's begin right there.
So let's start with something really basic, like that coffee cup we mentioned. In our everyday experience, we just perceive it as there, right? A complete, solid thing. But phenomenology tells us it's actually far more complex than that simple there-ness. It's not just there, is it? It actually comes to be known through various appearances, various moments of perception.
Precisely. Phenomenology begins by meticulously analyzing how a material thing is given to us in experience. This initial stage, it's often called the phenomenological analysis of the givenness of the thing. And it's a radical departure from just assuming the world is just, out there waiting passively to be observed. Instead, it examines how the world appears to us right here in our consciousness. Every object, everything is presented through what the texts call adumbrations.
Adumbrations.
Yeah, you can think of them as different profiles, angles, or sensory impressions, like shadows or partial views. You never perceive the whole cup at once, do you?
No, I guess not. I see one side.
Exactly. You see one side, then another. As you turn it, you feel its temperature, maybe hear its clink against the table. And these partial, fleeting impressions all coalesce. They come together in your consciousness to form your stable experience of the cup. The cup is always given through these partial perspectives, never as a fully transparent, complete whole in one go.
Okay, that makes so much sense when you put it that way. We intuitively stitch together these partial views, these adumbrations, without even really realizing we're doing it. And it's not just about what we can sense right now, is it? It's also about what's possible for that object. Our source material points out that concepts like mobility and alterability are absolutely fundamental constituents of any material thing. So that coffee cup isn't just static in its present state. It's not just sitting there. Its very essence, the very idea of it being a cup, includes the possibilities of being moved, turned, or even changing its temperature if you pour hot coffee into it.
Yeah.
It's never truly unchangeable in principle.
That's a crucial and often overlooked insight. Absolutely, even if a thing is de facto, in fact, unmoved or unchanged right now. The text says it would be countersensical to claim that it is unmovable and unchangeable in principle.
Countersens.
Which means that the very idea of a material thing inherently includes the potential for its motion and alteration. When you perceive the cup, you're not just apprehending its current state. You're implicitly understanding all the ways it could move, be manipulated, or transform. This potentiality, this inherent movability and changeability, it's an indispensable part of its givenness. It shapes our anticipation, how we interact with the world. I mean, try to imagine a thing that literally could not be moved or changed in any way. It becomes almost nonsensical within our usual framework of material reality.
Right, it just wouldn't compute as a thing in the way we understand things. Okay, so if the very essence of a material thing includes its potential for movement and change, and we're always encountering it through these shifting profiles, these adumbrations, what is it that we're actually perceiving in that constant flux? How does our mind manage to constitute a stable cup from all these fleeting appearances? This brings us to what the text calls the thing schema. Could you elaborate on that? What exactly is this thing schema, and why is it considered imperfect?
That's precisely where the concept of the thing schema comes in. Good question. Think of a thing schema as the constantly unfolding series of appearances an object presents to your senses as you interact with it or as conditions change. What actually comes to perception for us in the experience of a thing's alterations, say, it's changing color or shape as we move around it, or as the light shifts are these continuous courses of sensuous schemata, or, as the text puts it, the sensuous schema of the thing undergoes continuous alteration. The key point here, and this is important, is that the materiality itself, the underlying substance, doesn't properly come to view in this originary givenness.
So we don't see this stuff itself.
Not directly, no. We don't directly perceive pure, unadulterated materiality. We perceive its manifestations through our senses, through these dynamic, flowing schemata.
Okay, so when I look at the coffee cup, I see a certain color, a particular shape from my angle, a specific texture. But I don't see its backside, for example. Not right now. Yet, I understand it has one, and I could confirm it by turning the cup. That unseen backside is part of my experience of the cup, somehow, even if it's not directly given to my senses right now.
Exactly. You might even infer, as the text suggests, concerning the determinate color of the invisible backside, already somehow perceived as red. Is it completely uniformly red, or does it contain stains and streaks?
Ah, so there's fuzziness.
Precisely. This highlights the inherent indeterminateness in perception. Our consciousness actively fills in these gaps, anticipating what could be there based on the schema we do have. But the actual perception is always incomplete, always given through a schema which is always partial. The schema is what we directly experience, and it constantly shifts, but our consciousness actively constitutes a stable, unitary thing, the cup, from these shifting, indeterminate appearances. This process of filling in the gaps, of anticipating the unseen, this apperception, is fundamental to how we build a coherent world.
Okay, so the materiality isn't directly perceived, but rather inferred or constituted through these schemata and apperception. Then how do we understand something like substance? What's its role in constituting material things if we don't directly perceive it either?
Right. This leads us to materiality and substantiality. The text explains that substance signifies here nothing more than the material thing as such, considered to the extent that it is the identical something of real properties, that which actualizes itself temporally in regulated manifolds of states in regulated dependency on circumstances.
Okay, identical something. Regulated dependency.
Yes, and this is crucial because it connects reality and causality inseparably. The text states that real properties are ipso causal ones.
Real properties are causal ones.
Exactly. So the substance isn't some mystical hidden essence behind the appearances. It's the stable identity of the thing that underlies its various changing properties and, importantly, its predictable behavior within a causal network.
So this raises an important point, right? When we perceive an object, let's say a piece of iron, and we watch it melt, we're not just seeing a change in appearance, like from solid to liquid. We're intuitively grasping its substantiality. We grasp its inherent capacity for such transformations under specific causal circumstances, like applying heat. It's still iron, even if its state has changed. And we understand that these changes happen according to specific discoverable laws of nature. This intuitive grasp of continuity and causal behavior feels central to our experience of material reality.
Precisely. The thing is understood as the identical substrate of this or that self-manifesting property.
Right.
To truly know a thing phenomenologically, the text suggests, means to know from experience how it behaves under pressure and impact, in being bent and being broken, when heated and when cooled, etc.
So knowing its behavior.
I.e., to know its behavior in the nexus of its causalities. Yes. This understanding of its predictable behavior under various conditions, its resistance, its malleability, its melting point, This is what constitutes its substantiality for us in our experience. It's a dynamic, relational understanding, not just a static definition based on its current appearance.
Okay, dynamic and relational. I like that. Now, we've established how a thing is given through appearances and understood through its substantiality, its causal behavior. Let's transition to the idea that our perception is inherently subjective. This feels like a big step. It sounds like my specific qualities as a subject, as an experiencing being, are really impacting what I perceive. Meaning, my experience of that coffee cup might be fundamentally different from yours, even if we're looking at the same object.
Indeed. This takes us deeper into the constitution of the world, absolutely. The intuitive qualities or aestheta of material things like its color, its warmth, its texture, these prove to be dependent on my qualities, the makeup of the experiencing subject, and to be related to my body and my normal sensibility.
My body and my normal sensibility.
Yes. This means the way red appears to you, or the way a surface feels smooth to you, isn't a purely objective, inherent property residing solely in the thing itself. It's filtered, interpreted, and shaped by your unique sensory apparatus, your individual bodily constitution, maybe even your past experiences and expectations.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me because it kind of pushes against common sense, right? My experience of red might not be exactly like yours, or my perception of warmth could differ slightly based on, I don't know, whether my hands are cold. Yet we still generally agree it's red and it's warm. How does that work? If it's so fundamentally subjective, there must be some common ground, surely.
That's the core challenge phenomenology tackles, and it brings us to the crucial, absolutely indispensable role of the body, your own lived body. The body is, in the first place, the medium of all perception. It is the organ of perception and is necessarily involved in all perception.
The medium, the organ. Okay.
It's not just another physical object in the world, like the cup or the table. It's the very bearer of the 0 point of orientation.
0 point.
Yes, the here and now, from which the pure ego, the I, intuits space and the entire world of the senses. All perception, whether seeing, touching, or hearing, is rooted in our embodied experience. Your here is defined by your body's location, and your now by your immediate sensory presence. This bodily situatedness is what makes every experience unique to the individual, yet it also provides the grounding, the common reference point for potentially building a shared world.
Wow. So my physical body is quite literally the center of my perceptual world. It's the anchor from which all my experience radiates outwards. And this involves more than just static senses like passively receiving data, right? There's an active dynamic component mentioned, these kinesthetic sensations. What are those about?
Absolutely. Perception for phenomenology isn't passive reception. It has this twofold articulation, as the text calls it. There are kinesthetic sensations on the one side, the motivating, and the sensations of features on the other, the motivated.
Motivating and motivated.
Right. These kinesthetic sensations are our free, active bodily movements. Your eyes scanning the cup, your hand reaching out and grasping it, your head turning to get a different view. These movements motivate the sensations of features, meaning they call forth, they structure, they give context to the perceived qualities of the object, like its shape, its texture.
So my moving brings forth the object's features.
In a way, yes. Perception, therefore, isn't passive. It arises from this dynamic, embodied interplay between our active movement and the sensory feedback we receive. This dynamic interplay also leads to something called optimal givenness.
Optimal givenness.
Yeah, it's like a privileged appearance of a thing. For example, seeing a sculpture in clear daylight from a particular angle that reveals its form most clearly, or feeling the texture of fabric with just the right pressure. This optimal appearance becomes the predominating focus of the interests. We intuitively seek out the appearance that provides relatively the best and most comprehensive understanding of the thing as a whole. It's how we achieve a stable, coherent perception despite the constant flux of individual schemata, those partial views we talked about.
Okay, so we're building up this world from subjective, embodied experiences rooted in our body through these active kinesthetic movements and seeking out these optimal appearances. But the world we inhabit isn't just my world or your world, is it? We clearly share it. We talk about the same cup. How does phenomenology account for this crucial leap? How do we get from what sounds like a potentially solipsistic experience, just me and my perceptions, to an intersubjective one, a shared reality?
This is a critical and, frankly, very profound transition in the analysis. Initially, one could conceive of a solipsistic world, as the text puts it, and I could, in theory, experience a world, and it would be exactly the same as the one I actually do experience. Everything would be the same, with the only exception that in my field of experience, there would be no other experiencing subjects, no other people.
A world just for me. Seems lonely.
And perhaps incoherent in the long run. But the point is, such a world might seem initially possible from the perspective of pure perception. However, the recognition of other bodies and fellow men is absolutely crucial for establishing an objective world, a world shared in time and space. The apprehension of the body, specifically the bodies of others, plays a special role for the intersubjectivity in which all objects are apprehended objectively as things in the one objective time and one objective space of the one objective world.
So seeing other bodies acting like mine is key.
Yes. It means that by encountering other bodies that move, perceive, and act in ways analogous to our own, they reach for things, they look around, they express feelings, we empathically recognize them as other centers of experience, other eyes like ourselves. This mutual recognition, this empathy, or pairing as it's sometimes called, is what allows us to transcend our individual perceptions and constitute a truly shared intersubjective reality. The true thing, then, the objective thing, is understood as the object that maintains its identity across the manifolds of appearances belonging to a multiplicity of subjects, who can mutually verify each other's experiences of it.
Okay, that makes sense. It's through recognizing others as subjects like me, who also perceive and act, that we build this bridge to a shared objective world. So we've got our subjective embodied experience, and then we're stepping into a shared intersubjective world through recognizing other subjects. But then there's also the scientific, physicalistic understanding of things. We touched on this. How does that fit into this phenomenological picture? Does the physicalistic thing, the thing physics describes, even have sense qualities, like color or warmth in the scientific sense? Or are those purely subjective?
This brings us to a crucial and often, well, surprising distinction that deeply impacts our understanding of reality. It really challenges common assumptions. Physicalistic nature, or the physicalistic thing, is what science aims to describe the objective, measurable correlate of our experienced world. The text says it consists of a continuously or discretely filled space in states of motion, states which are called energy forms. It lends itself to certain groups of differential equations and corresponds to certain fundamental laws of physics. So far, so familiar, right?
Yeah, sounds like physics class.
But here's the critical point, as our source clearly states. But there are no sense qualities here. And that means there are no qualities here, whatever.
Whoa, wait. No sense qualities, none at all. So the red of the coffee cup, or its warmth, isn't part of the cup's physicalistic nature. It's not in the atoms and molecules themselves.
Exactly. From a purely physicalistic perspective, that experience of red is a product of light wavelengths interacting with the cup's surface properties. And then those photons hitting your retina, stimulating neural pathways, and finally, your consciousness constituting the experience of red. The scientific object itself is described by its measurable properties, its mass, its atomic structure, how it reflects light at certain frequencies, not by the sensory experience of redness or warmth we ascribe to it in our lived experience. The quality of what fills space is sense quality, the text notes, and that's precisely what is stripped away in the physicalistic account to achieve objectivity.
So the world of physics is colorless, soundless, tasteless.
In terms of subjective qualia, yes. This is where the classic distinction between secondary and primary qualities becomes vital but understood phenomenologically. Secondary qualities, like color, taste, temperature as felt, are understood as relative to our subjective experience, dependent on our sensory organs and consciousness. They are not inherent to the physicalistic thing itself. Primary qualities, on the other hand, are the geometric and physical properties, like magnitude, form, figure, motion, which are considered objective, measurable, and absolute for scientific understanding.
This raises a really important question then. So for physics, the red of the coffee cup isn't an inherent quality of the cup itself, but a subjective appearance constituted by consciousness interacting with physical processes. The true nature, from that purely scientific perspective, is understood through its measurable properties, its energy forms, its mathematical descriptions. It's a profound shift from our everyday experience, isn't it? It suggests that the world science describes is actually a highly abstract, idealized construct. It's stripped of the very qualities, the colors, sounds, smells, tastes, feels that make the world vibrant and meaningful in our direct lived experience. It's a bit like saying the recipe for a cake contains all the ingredients and instructions, but it doesn't contain the actual taste of the cake itself. The taste only emerges in the act of eating it, in the experience. And here, our consciousness is kind of like the eater of the physical world, bringing these sensory qualities to life.
That's an excellent analogy. It truly highlights how different our lived, experienced world, the life world, as it's often called, is from the abstract, measurable world of physics. And it raises fascinating questions about where reality truly resides, or maybe how these two seemingly disparate views of the world, the experienced and the physicalistic, are ultimately related and brought together through consciousness. Phenomenology isn't trying to deny the validity or power of the scientific world, not at all. Rather, it's investigating its foundations in our lived experience and showing how that scientific view itself is a specific kind of constitution, a specific way of making sense of the world achieved through particular methods and abstractions.
Okay, we've peeled back the layers of how we experience inanimate objects, these things, and explored the radical difference between our perceived world, full of qualities, and the bare physicalistic world of science. Now, let's make an even more complex leap. What happens when we consider living beings, things with, well, insides? Our source material makes a fascinating jump here, talking about material things that possess a psychic stratum. This is where the plot really thickens, isn't it? We're talking about bodies that have souls, maybe, or our bodies, capital B, connected to lived experiences, not just matter anymore.
Yes, the focus significantly shifts here from purely inanimate matter to a specific category of material things, those that have the rank of bodies and, as such, display a connection with a new stratum of being, the psychic stratum. This is a crucial conceptual step beyond mere material nature, as you say. It introduces the dimension of inner conscious life, what we commonly refer to as mind or soul. We're moving from a purely physical description to one that necessarily includes sensations, perceptions, feelings, effects, memories, desires, all the richness of conscious experience. These bodies are distinct because they are not just extended matter like a rock or a table. They're also centers of lived experience, points of view on the world.
Right. And these lived experiences, the sensations, perceptions, feelings, effects, they aren't just isolated, disconnected events happening randomly inside these bodies, are they? The text seems to emphatically emphasize their unity. It talks about them as continuous flow.
That's absolutely right. The source strongly rejects the common, maybe mechanistic notion that lived experiences are not given to us in experience as annexes, lacking internal connection of material bodies, as if they were unified with one another only through the common phenomenal link to the body, like beads on a string, maybe.
Yeah, like separate little blips.
Exactly. Instead, it asserts a really profound insight. They are one by means of their very essence. They are bound and interwoven together. They flow into one another in layers and are possible only in this unity of a stream.
The unity of a stream.
Yes. This stream of consciousness is an essential holistic unity. Your thoughts don't exist in total isolation from your feelings. Your memories are often colored by your current mood. Your perceptions are infused with anticipation or past experience. Each individual experience gains its full meaning and character from its dynamic place within this continuous, unbroken flow. They mutually influence each other constantly.
So my feeling of joy from a moment ago, or my memory of a favorite song that pops into my head, or the feeling of hunger I might have right now, they aren't just isolated events happening in different compartments of my mind. They're all part of this continuous interwoven flow, defining what it means to be me in this very moment. It's like a complex, ever-changing tapestry, maybe, where each thread influences and is influenced by all the others, creating a complete, living picture of my inner world, constantly evolving from moment to moment.
That's a perfect analogy indeed. This stream of lived experience is fundamental to understanding animal nature or conscious life and sets it apart fundamentally from purely material things which lack this inner dimension. It's the very foundation of what it means to be a conscious, sentient being.
And within this rich, flowing stream of lived experiences, there's also this concept of the pure ego. It sounds kind of like a constant, maybe unchanging anchor in this otherwise dynamic, flowing river of consciousness. What exactly is this pure ego, and how does it maintain its identity amidst all that flux?
The pure ego is introduced as the ego pole. Think of it as the central point, the identical subject of every cogito, every act of consciousness. Thinking, perceiving, remembering, judging, willing. It is described as the being of which it is not possible to doubt, because it is the very I that performs all these conscious acts. Even doubting requires an I who doubts.
The classic, I think, therefore I am kind of idea.
Related, yes, but developed differently here. Importantly, the text states it has no beginning or end, generation or perishing, only stepping forth and receding. This means the pure ego doesn't come into being or pass away in the way a physical object or even a psychological state does. Rather, it becomes actively engaged in specific acts of consciousness. It steps forth, or it recedes into the background when we're less actively engaged or perhaps asleep. It is the persistent, identical I that underlies and performs all conscious acts. It's the thread of continuity that runs through the stream of experience, always there, even if not always explicitly present to itself.
Okay, so it's not like my physical body that's born and eventually perishes. The pure ego is more like a constant, unchanging point of reference, always there in the background, making all my experiences my experiences. And this pure ego has the remarkable ability to grasp itself. It can be aware of itself.
Yes, this capacity for self-relation, for self-awareness, is considered intrinsic to the ego. The essence of the pure ego thereby includes the possibility of an originary self-grasp, a self-perception, and in that case also the possibility of self-remembrance and self-fantasy.
Self-perception, self-remembrance.
Exactly. This means the ego can reflect upon its own past experiences, recognize itself as the subject of those experiences. I remember feeling happy yesterday, and even imagine itself in future scenarios. I plan to go shopping tomorrow. This self-awareness, this capacity for introspection, and the feeling of continuity of self-identity over time is a defining characteristic of the pure ego. It's not just a blank focusing point. It has this inherent reflexivity.
Okay. And this ego isn't always fully active, is it? There's mention of a polarity of acts, suggesting different modes of its functioning. It's not always on in the same way.
That's correct. We can observe an essential polarity in how the ego functions. On one hand, the ego steps forth, as it were, in them, the acts. It comes to the light of day. It exercises an active living function. It directs itself in an active ray toward what is objective.
An active ray, like a spotlight?
Sort of, yes. This is the active ego, the I that is consciently attentive, engaged, performing a specific act, like focusing on solving a problem, actively perceiving an object, making a decision. Conversely, there's the idea of a latent ego, which does not cast an active regard onto something. It does not actively experience or have an effect on or undergo anything. This distinction is crucial because it accounts for the vast background of our consciousness that isn't always at the forefront of our attention. The ego is always there, potentially, but its level of active engagement varies.
Right. So the pure ego acts as this unwavering center, this I, yet our stream of lived experiences is incredibly vast and constantly flowing. It leads us to wonder how much of that stream are we actually aware of at any given moment? How much is lit up by that active ray? This brings us neatly to the distinction you mentioned earlier between alert and dull consciousness. Can you expand on that?
Precisely. The text suggests that the very essence of consciousness, in its unity as a flux, is such that the pure ego cannot illuminate everything in it, but instead shines its light on individual acts. When the ego actively directs its regard or attention towards a particular aspect of the stream of consciousness, a specific thought, a sensation, an external object, that part of consciousness becomes alert. It's brought into sharp focus, illuminated. But when the ego is latent, or the focus is not on a particular act or on the background elements, that part of consciousness remains dull or in the background.
So dull doesn't mean bad, just not in focus.
Exactly. It reflects the reality that our conscious life is not uniformly illuminated. There's always a periphery, a vast horizon of experiences and background awareness, bodily sensations, ambient noises, fleeting thoughts that remains largely in the shadows, unexamined, yet still part of our living experience.
Yeah, this distinction is crucial because it highlights that even in our most active moments, when we're deeply focused on a task, maybe reading this very transcript, there's always a vast horizon of our own consciousness that remains dull or in the background. It's like a silent partner to our focused awareness. This background awareness allows us to process countless subconscious or unattended element that maybe our breathing, the temperature of the room, lingering emotions from an earlier conversation while we're intently focused on a single task. Yet we're still somehow aware of the broader context of our existence. It means we're never truly empty, even when our attention is narrowly focused.
That's exactly it. It's part of the rich, multi-layered complexity of our inner life. It reveals that consciousness isn't just a simple spotlight sweeping around, but rather a field with varying degrees of illumination and depth, constantly shifting.
Moving on slightly, we've talked about the body as the medium of perception, the 0 point. But the text presents the body not just as a physical object, but as a double-sided reality. That sounds fascinating. What does that mean? How is the body originally constituted in a double way? This sounds like a really unique position for our physical form.
The body is indeed unique, fundamentally unique, and constituted in this double way, according to the analysis. First, the text says, it is a physical thing, matter. It has its extension, in which are included its real properties, its color, smoothness, hardness.
Like the objective physical body.
Yes. In this sense, it is an object among other objects in the world, subject to physical laws, measurable, observable from the outside by a doctor, for instance. And second, it is bearer of localized sensations, sensings.
Bearer of sensations.
Right. These sensations, things like the feeling of warmth, or a tingle, or an ache, they spread out in space within the body. They are localized in the arm or the foot. But, and this is key, this spreading out and spreading into are precisely something that differs essentially from the extension of all material determinations of a thing. The sensation of pain in your arm, for example, is localized in your arm. You feel it there, but the pain itself isn't a measurable physical extension like the arm's length or width. It's a lived experience, a quality that uniquely inheres in your body as lived.
Ah, okay. So it's the difference between seeing a bruise on my arm, which is an objective, visible property, and feeling the ache of that bruise, which is a subjective internal experience located in that bruised area.
Precisely. One is an objective property of the physical thing, the body object. The other is a subjective state of the lived body, the body subject.
So when I touch my own hand with my other hand, there's a fascinating dual experience there, isn't there? It's not quite like touching a table or someone else's hand.
Yes, exactly. The source describes this beautifully. It says, if this happens by means of some other part of one's body, then the sensation is doubled in the two parts of the body, since each is then precisely for the other an external thing that is touching and acting upon it, and each is at the same time body.
Doubled. Okay, how so?
Well, you feel being touched, a sensation localized in the hand being touched, and you feel touching, an active sensation perhaps localized in the fingertips of the touching hand, simultaneously from both sides of the interaction within your own unified experience. Your hand is both an object of sensation for the other hand and a subject having the sensation of the other hand. This illustrates its double nature vividly. It is both a physical object in the world and the locus of my immediate lived subjective experience.
That's a really neat way to capture it. The hand is both thing and feeler. And this body isn't just a passive receiver of sensations or just an object in space. It's also actively involved in our will, our volition, and our ability to move freely.
That's the other crucial aspect, absolutely. The body is also constituted as the organ of the will and as seat of free movement. And this is not merely mechanical movement, like a machine part moving simply because an external force acted upon it. Instead, it's experienced as a spontaneous movement in the sense, I move my hand.
I move my hand.
Yes. This phrasing highlights the intentional aspect of bodily action. The physical movement is permeated by conscious intent and choice, a decision or a command originating from the ego. It's described sometimes as a fiat, a conscious let it be done that initiates the movement, rather than the movement being merely a predetermined consequence of prior physical causes in a chain reaction.
Right. This I move my hand isn't just a description of a physical event like a muscle contracting. It's permeated by my conscious intention, my decision. It's that fiat you mentioned that seems to transcend pure physical causality. It really speaks to a fundamental freedom we experience within our own body, doesn't it? That sense that we are initiating the action, that we are not simply puppets of physical forces or biological reflexes all the time. It's not just a billiard ball striking another. It feels like my will initiating an action, which then sets a chain of physical events, nerve impulses, muscle contractions, in motion. This seems to imply a really significant difference between mind or soul and matter.
Precisely. And this leads us directly to acknowledge some fundamental differences between material and psychic reality highlighted in the texts. While causality is a constitutive idea for material nature for the idea of the physical thing, meaning physical events happen in predictable cause and effect chains governed by laws, it is deemed inapplicable to the soul in the same way.
Inapplicable to the soul. So my thoughts don't cause each other like dominoes.
Not in that purely mechanical external sense. Psychic events like thoughts following thoughts, feelings arising from perceptions, or acts of will leading to actions, they are connected through motivation, meaning, and association, not brute physical causality. Furthermore, there's a crucial distinction made regarding divisibility. The soul, has no places, no pieces. It is absolutely not a fragmentable unity.
Not fragmentable.
Correct. This sharply contrasts with the material thing as res extensa, extended substance, which is fragmentable in principle. A physical thing, like a piece of paper or even a body part, can be broken, divided, or separated into parts. But the soul, understood as the unity of lived experience, cannot. You can't cut a soul in half or locate a feeling at specific spatial coordinates XYZ. It's an indivisible qualitative unity experienced as a whole stream.
That's a really clear distinction. Matter is divisible in space, soul is not. Okay, so we have the body with its unique double-sided reality, bridging the material and the psychic. It's both an object and a lived experience, both extended in space and the seat of non-extended sensations and will. Now, let's talk about time itself. This also seems to have a dual nature in phenomenology. How does time relate to the soul and pure consciousness, especially when we consider this difference between immanent versus objective time? It seems to suggest two different kinds of now.
This is a deep and, frankly, often counterintuitive area of phenomenology, dealing with time consciousness. The text states that pure consciousness is a genuine temporal field, a field of phenomenological time. This immanent time is described as unidimensional and constant. It's the intrinsic, subjective flow of our lived experiences as they succeed one another, the continuous now that is constantly becoming, retaining the immediate past, retention, and anticipating the immediate future, pretension, flowing within consciousness itself.
So the time of my experience...
Exactly. The very form of the stream. This is distinct from objective time, which is something that is constituted, along with nature, by consciousness.
Constituted by consciousness, not just measured by it.
Yes, constituted. Objective time is the uniform, measurable, intersubjectively valid time of the physical world. The time on a clock, the time used in physics equations, it's a framework we construct and agree upon. And it is through what's called psychic apprehension, through interpreting our lived experiences as belonging to a psychophysical being in the world, that our conscious lived experiences obtain the sense of psychophysical states and consequently their insertion into objective time.
Wow. So the now of my inner experience, that feeling of an hour flying by when I'm engrossed in a hobby or dragging on forever when I'm bored waiting for something, that subjective flow is fundamentally different from the now on a clock. The clock's now is already a constructed objective reality that we all agree upon, a kind of public time. My personal subjective experience of a minute might feel incredibly long or incredibly short, but the clock ticks on regardless, imposing an external, standardized rhythm onto my experience.
Exactly right. The immanent time of consciousness is the absolute foundational basis. It's the constant flow of our lived experience, often referred to as inner time consciousness, with its own internal structure of retention, primal impression, and pretension. Objective time, conversely, is a higher-level constitution. It's an intersubjectively valid framework that we apply to the world, including our own psychophysical states, like saying, I felt happy for an hour yesterday. It allows us to coordinate our experiences with others, let's meet at 3 p.m., and with the physical processes of nature. It's another powerful example of how our consciousness actively constitutes the world we inhabit, creating both our deeply personal, flowing, temporal reality and the shared, measurable, public one.
Okay, we've journeyed from the raw experience of material things through the complex nature of our own body and mind, and even grasped the two faces of time, inner and objective. Now we're stepping into an even more intricate realm, the personal ego and the world of meaning. This sounds like where our actions, our values, our sense of self as a unique individual truly come into play. And it seems to start with something called motivation in phenomenology, which is apparently quite different from the natural causality we discussed earlier in physics.
Yes, indeed. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, understanding the spiritual life, which here means the realm of the personal ego, the realm of meaning, value, and culture, it requires a fundamental shift in perspective. We move away from thinking solely in terms of external physical causes pushing things around and towards understanding internal motivations. It's not because of in a purely physical billiard ball sense, but because I judge this way, or because I value that outcome, or because I understood the situation like this. Motivation is introduced as the defining lawfulness of the life of the spirit for the spiritual or personal ego.
The lawfulness of the life of the spirit. That's a great phrase.
Isn't it? It's the driving force behind our conscious acts, our decisions, our evaluations, our position-taking in the world, like agreeing or disagreeing, liking or disliking. This is what gives our actions meaning and makes them personal, rather than merely being automatic reactions.
Right. So it's not like a domino effect of physical forces, where one event physically triggers the next in a predictable chain. The source emphasizes that the because so of motivation has a totally different sense than causality in the sense of nature. Could you elaborate on that distinction a bit further? It seems really key.
Absolutely. Natural causality, as we said, describes lawful dependencies between physical events. It's often understood as a chain of cause and effect that can, in principle, be mathematically described and observed objectively from the outside. Think. The sun heats a rock, causing it to expand effect. Motivation, however, is grasped originarily intuitively. It's an internal conscious because that we understand directly through our lived experience or through empathy when understanding others or through reflection on our own actions. It's about reasons, not just physical triggers.
Originarily, intuitively. So we just get it from the inside.
In a sense, yes. For example, the text differentiates between being vexed by a loud din outside, which can be understood partly in terms of external causal stimuli impacting our sensory organs, versus being vexed by, say, a popular song that's haunting one's fantasy, stuck in your head.
The dreaded earworm.
Exactly. The subjective experience of vexation might feel similar in both cases, but the because in the earworm case is purely internal, mental, and motivational. It's not a physical cause in the same way. It's the meaning of the song for you, or perhaps it's annoying persistence in your memory that vexes you, not merely its non-existent acoustic properties in that moment.
That distinction is crucial.
Yeah.
The song isn't physically pushing buttons in my brain in that moment in the same way that actual sound waves hit my eardrum and cause a physical reaction. It's my mind engaging with it, finding it annoying, perhaps deciding it's bothersome because it's distracting me. And for something to motivate us to act because in this spiritual personal sense, it has to be part of our consciousness, right? It can't be something completely external and unknown to us.
Yeah, precisely. The spirit, the personal ego, is not determined by what it doesn't know or what isn't intentionally included in its lived experiences. As the text puts it, what I do not know, what does not stand over against me in my lived experiences, does not determine me as a spirit, and what is not intentionally included in my lived experiences does not motivate me, not even unconsciously.
Not even unconsciously. How does that work?
Well, phenomenologically speaking, even unconscious motivations, if they are truly motivations influencing the spirit, must somehow be present or accessible within the broader field of lived experience, perhaps as vague feelings, tendencies, unarticulated desires, or background beliefs, rather than being entirely outside the realm of consciousness like a purely physical force acting on the body from without. They have to be intendable.
Okay, so motivation stems from within our conscious or potentially conscious sphere. This means our world isn't just a collection of physical objects behaving according to causal laws. It's also a surrounding world. That's the term used, right? A world imbued with personal meaning, a tapestry woven from our intentional acts and motivations. How is this concept of the surrounding world different from the purely physical world we discussed earlier, or even the intersubjective world of shared objects?
The surrounding world, or Umwelt, is inextricably linked to the person, the personal ego. As person, I am what I am as subject of a surrounding world. The concepts of ego and surrounding world are related to one another inseparably.
Inseparable.
This is the world not just as an objective entity out there, but as it is perceived by the person in his acts, is remembered, grasped in thought, surmised or revealed as such and such. It is the world of which this personal ego is conscious, and towards which it takes stances. It's a world constituted by our intentional experiences, our perceptions, memories, judgments, emotions, plans. It's saturated with our personal history, our values, our anticipations, and therefore profoundly meaningful to us. It's not just a world, it's my world, or your world, in its unique configuration of significance and relevance.
And while each of us clearly has our own unique surrounding world, shaped by our individual experiences and memories and concerns, we also seem to share one. We live in a common world. It's a fascinating paradox.
Yes, it is. The text acknowledges this. At the same time, a plurality of persons in communication with one another has a common surrounding world. We share a common objective reality, a common stage, that allows us to communicate and interact. We can point to the same tree or the same political event, but each person also has their individual surrounding world to the extent they know of it, insofar as they grasp it through their personal apprehensions, interpretations, values, and positings. My surrounding world includes my specific memories tied to that building, my emotional associations with this particular park, or my learned understanding of a cultural symbol, all of which might differ significantly from yours, even if we are both looking at the same physical structures or events.
Yeah, think about it. We might both be looking at the same city skyline, physically seeing the same buildings, the same light playing on them. But your surrounding world of that skyline may be filled with your unique memories of growing up there, your feelings attached to certain landmarks you visited with family, the dreams you projected onto as towering structures.
Yeah.
That's utterly unique to you. The shared physical structures are there, yes, but the personal resonance, the deeper significance, the emotional landscape overlaid onto it, that's your individual contribution, your spiritualized meaning woven into the objective reality.
And this personal apprehension can actively spiritualize objects, as you say. Objects in the surrounding world can gain spiritual significance far beyond their mere physical existence. The source provides examples like a drinking glass, a house, a spoon, theater, temple, etc. mean something. They aren't just arrangements of matter. There's a profound difference between seeing something as a thing, just matter, and seeing it as a useful object, as a theater, temple, etc.
Usefulness, function, purpose.
Yes, and more. A house isn't just a structure of bricks and wood. It's potentially a home, a sanctuary, a symbol of family or status. A temple isn't just a building. It's perceived and experienced as a sacred space, imbued with reverence and spiritual meaning. And crucially, these objects are not merely bound side by side with their spiritual sense, like having a physical object plus a separate mental tag. Instead, they are fused with it. The spiritual sense is, by animating the sensuous appearances, fused with them in a certain way.
Fused, animated.
Exactly. The meaning isn't experienced as an external label stuck on. It permeates and transforms our very experience of the object itself. The meaning shines through the appearance.
That's a truly powerful idea. That our meaning-making, our intentional acts, our cultural understanding can actively animate and transform the physical world around us, giving it depth and significance it wouldn't possess on its own. This is how we create culture, isn't it? Art, symbols, tools, institutions, personal narratives, they all involve this spiritualization. Now, let's consider the social dimension more fully. How does our personal ego function within this rich social fabric of shared meaning in other persons? We're not isolated egos.
No, not at all. Persons exist fundamentally in a personal association and relate to a common surrounding world. These aspects are mutually dependent. This mutual understanding, the shared world of meaning, is not merely incidental. It's absolutely essential for both individual personhood and communal life. As the text states pointedly, we could not be persons for others if there were not over and against us a common surrounding world.
We need common ground to even be persons for each other.
Precisely. Our identity as persons is deeply intertwined with our social relations. Our ability to understand and be understood by others through empathy and communication, and the shared meanings, values, and practices we collectively create and inhabit. We develop as persons through and within this social fabric.
And we're not entirely isolated, autonomous agents making decisions in a vacuum, are we? The development of a person seems heavily influenced by others, by the culture and society they grow up in.
Indeed. The text acknowledges this clearly. Personal development is determined by the influence of others, by the influence of their thoughts, their feelings, their commandments. This influence can be direct, from other individuals we interact with, family, friends, teachers, or it can be indirect, through what's called objective spirit. This refers to collective, institutionalized forms of meaning and value that exist in our culture. Things like legal institutions, morals and religious prescriptions, social customs, language itself. These stand over against us as powerful collective forces shaping our understanding, our values, and our behavior, often without us even realizing it.
So we're shaped by society, by objective spirit.
Yes, but importantly, even within these powerful influences, we retain a unique form of freedom as personal egos. We aren't just passive products. The text differentiates between merely following habitual inclination, acting out of ingrained patterns or social pressures without conscious reflection, and acting freely by obeying rational motives.
Rational motives again.
Yes. As it says, I am entirely free if I am not motivated passively. That is, if I do not carry out the consequence through affection passive following, but through rational motives. True freedom, then, in this view, is not simply doing whatever impulse arises, nor is it being completely uninfluenced. It's about acting based on conscious deliberation, on reasons and values that I personally affirm and take responsibility for, even if those values were initially learned from my culture.
Okay, this raises another important question, doesn't it? How much of our free action is truly independent in origin, and how much is shaped, perhaps subtly, by the social and cultural motivations that permeate our surrounding world? Even when we think we're being independent and rational, we're operating within a vast framework of language, values, beliefs, and assumptions that we've inherited. It sounds like freedom here isn't the absence of influence, but rather the ability to consciously engage with, reflect upon, and rationally respond to those influences, to make them our own or reject them based on reason.
That's a profound way to put it, and it captures a central challenge and insight of phenomenology regarding autonomy. It's a situated freedom, not an absolute one. And connected to this idea of situated freedom is the concept of I can as practical possibility.
Practical possibility, how's that different from just logical possibility?
It refers to what I can do, what is in my power, my actual competence in a given situation. It's distinct from mere logical possibility, like it's logically possible I could flap my arms and fly, but it's not practically possible for me. The text states, I cannot will anything that I do not have consciously in view, that does not lie in my power, in my competence. This highlights that our freedom, our will, is bounded by our actual abilities, our current skills, our understanding of the situation, and our conscious intentions. It delineates our concrete field of action and responsibility. You can only meaningfully will what you conceive as being within your power to achieve.
Right, I can't genuinely will to teleport across the room because I know it's not in my power.
Right.
Okay. And finally, in this section on the personal ego, when we try to understand other people, we often categorize them or try to grasp their character. Phenomenology distinguishes between understanding someone based on general type versus individual type of motivations.
Yes, that's another useful distinction for understanding others. We can often comprehend motivations that are based on a general type, something considered universally human. For example, this man is now reaching for a cup because he wants to drink, because he is thirsty.
Basic human need. Got it.
Right. Understanding this motivation in its generality, this has nothing to do with his person, specifically. It's something we could understand in almost anyone. However, an individual type of motivation manifests in specific character traits and personal values that go beyond the universally human. For instance, the example continues. Maybe the man suddenly lowers the cup because he notices a poor child nearby and hands the cup to the child. This specific act, the text suggests, manifests his good heart and does pertain to his person. It reveals something about his individual character, his specific values.
So the general type explains the basic action, thirst, but the individual type explains the specific personal choice made in that situation, giving the drink away.
Exactly. It allows for a deeper, more personal understanding of others, recognizing the unique individuality built upon, but not reducible to, universal human traits. We understand why he acted this way, not just because he was thirsty, general, but because of who he is as a person, individual.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From the constitution of physical objects to the complexities of the lived body, the psychic stream, and now the personal ego operating within a world of meaning and motivation. Now let's talk about the radical shift that phenomenology itself demands as a method, a fundamental change in how we approach our experience of the world. It's described as moving from the natural attitude to the phenomenological attitude. What exactly is this natural attitude that we usually operate in? Apparently without even realizing it.
The natural attitude is essentially our ordinary, everyday way of experiencing the world. It's the default mode of human consciousness. In this attitude, the world, objects, people, events, even our own thoughts and feelings viewed psychologically is taken as unquestionably pre-given as existing.
She out there, solid, real.
Exactly. We simply take its existence for granted. We accept it as a reality that is just there, outside of us, independent of our consciousness, without questioning its fundamental givenness or how it is constituted in and for our consciousness. All the positive sciences, for example, physics, biology, psychology, sociology, operate primarily within this natural attitude. They study objects and processes within the already assumed world, drawing their verification from natural, mundane experience. We perceive objects as simply existing, other people as simply there, the past as simply having happened, generally without much philosophical thought about the mechanisms of that givenness, how it all appears to us.
Right. For most of us, most of the time, the world just is. We don't question its fundamental existence. We just live in it, interact with it, navigate it, and assume its reality without a second thought. That's our natural attitude. It's incredibly efficient for daily life, obviously. It allows us to get things done without constant existential crises. But it sounds like it also glosses over a lot of profound underlying processes, how that world comes to appear to us in the first place.
Indeed it does. And to move beyond this everyday taken-for-granted stance, to truly understand how our experience is structured and constituted, phenomenology introduces a specific method, the phenomenological reduction, also known as the epoche.
Epoche. Greek word?
Yes, meaning suspension or cessation. This epoch is described as a transformation of attitude that provides access to the transcendental phenomenological sphere. It involves bracketing or suspending judgment about the world's actual existence, its reality status independent of our consciousness. Now, it's crucial to understand this isn't about denying the world exists or doubting it like a philosophical skeptic might. That's not the point.
So we don't become solipsists.
Not at all. Rather, it's a methodological act. We temporarily put aside our belief in its objective, independent reality. We bracket the question of whether it's really real out there in order to focus purely on how it appears to consciousness as a phenomenon. This act frees the regard for the world of consciousness purely as such, the world purely as given in the manifold flux of conscious life. We become interested in the phenomena themselves as they are experienced without making claims about their ultimate external reality status.
Okay, so it's like putting the entire world and our belief in its simple existence, in parentheses, not to erase it, but to be able to examine the experience of it more clearly without those assumptions getting in the way. It's a temporary suspension, a focusing lens, and this pure phenomenology, which uses this epoch, isn't the same as psychology, right? Even though both deal with consciousness and experience, that feels like a really crucial distinction for listeners who might easily conflate the two.
That's a vital clarification, and one that's often misunderstood, leading to phenomenology being dismissed as just introspection. While the text acknowledges that descriptive psychology offers a genuine and natural point of departure for the working out of the idea of phenomenology, and historically it was even the way which led Husserl to phenomenology, it must be fully established in a deeper investigation that phenomenology, the way we understand it as eidetic, is in no way descriptive psychology and has, in strict truth, not even one part in common with it. That's a strong claim.
Wow, not even one part in common. Why so different?
Because psychology typically operates within the natural attitude. It describes what happens in the mind, how we behave, how we feel, what are the empirical facts and causes of mental life. It treats consciousness and mental states as existent psychological facts in the world, alongside other worldly facts.
Okay, so this raises that important question again. Well, psychology often describes what happens in the mind, how we behave, how we feel, gathering empirical data about mental states phenomenology using the epoche aims to understand how the mind structures and makes sense of its experiences. It's looking for the deeper foundational inquiry into the very mechanisms and essential structures of consciousness itself that make any experience possible at all. So psychology might describe that I see red under certain conditions, maybe measure brain activity, but phenomenology asks how I constitute the very experience of red, what are its essential structures as an experience, and what makes it my experience appearing to me. It's a shift from empirical description to essential analysis of consciousness itself.
Precisely. Psychology observes and measures phenomena within the pre-given world, including mental phenomena treated as worldly events. Phenomenology, through the epoch, suspends belief in that pre-given world's independent existence, precisely to investigate the transcendental subjectivity, the structures of consciousness itself that constitutes those phenomena, and makes them meaningful in the first place. It's not interested in individual psychological facts or causal explanations in the natural world sense, but in the universal necessary structures, the essences of consciousness that make any experience, including psychological experience, possible. It's a science of essences, or eidos, not empirical facts.
Science of essences. Okay, so what does this radical shift, this adoption of the phenomenological attitude via the epoche, actually reveal to us? What tools does it give us to grasp essences, these fundamental blueprints of experience?
It reveals the power of what's called eidetic intuition, or eidetic variation. This is the method used within the reduced sphere to examine, in eidetic intuition, the essence of the experienced in general, and as such. How do we do that? By placing them actual experiences beside pure intuitive possibilities that have been varied completely ad libitum freely in imagination, and then extrapolating, as their a priori, the indissoluble essential structure.
Okay, varying possibilities freely in imagination. How does that work? Like imagining different kinds of chairs.
Exactly like that. It's about grasping what is necessary, invariant, and universally true for something to be that kind of thing or experience, regardless of its particular factual details. So by imagining many different tables, round, square, wooden, metal, large, small, three-legged, four-legged, even imaginary tables, and asking what must remain for this still to be graspable as a table, may one can, through this imaginative variation or eidetic intuition, grasp the essential qualities, the eidos, that make a table a table, maybe the having a flat surface raised for use. The specifics fall away, leaving the core essence. It's about discerning the whatness of a thing or an experience type.
Right. It's like seeing the fundamental blueprint or the underlying constant pattern behind all possible variations of an object or experience. It's truly getting to the core structure. And a core concept we've returned to multiple times today, which becomes even more central here in the phenomenological attitude, is intentionality. You mentioned it's the hallmark of consciousness.
Yes, intentionality is absolutely central, perhaps the central discovery or theme of phenomenology. Within the reduced sphere, it becomes crystal clear that consciousness is always consciousness of an object. It's inherently directed, relational. This means that a noema and a nomadic object are immanently constituted. At perception, consciousness of an object is produced.
Noema and noematic object. Can you unpack those quickly?
Sure. Consciousness is never an empty container, never just a blank awareness. It's always directed towards something, whether it's perceiving a tree, remembering a dream, desiring that cup of coffee, fearing a spider, or understanding a philosophical concept. This intentional relation, this aboutness or directedness, is the fundamental structure of all conscious life. The ego is always a subject of intentionalities, actively constituting the meaning and sense of whatever it is directed towards. The noema is the specific way the object is intended, the meaning or sense that consciousness gives to the object in that particular act. For example, the cup as perceived from this angle, as remembered fondly, as desired for coffee. And the nomadic object is the object itself, but always considered as it is constituted within and given to consciousness through that particular noema within that intentional act. They are two inseparable sides of the same intentional structure, the intending act and the intended object as intended.
Okay, so consciousness is always directed, always intending something in a particular way. Got it. This whole project, bracketing the world, focusing on consciousness, grasping essences, analyzing intentionality, it sounds incredibly profound and ambitious. The source even calls phenomenology first philosophy, placing it at the very bedrock of all knowledge and science. What does that mean to be first philosophy?
It does make that claim. Phenomenology is presented as potentially a universal and absolutely foundational science, explicitly aiming to be first philosophy, the philosophy of the beginning. It aims to uncover transcendental subjectivity, this realm of pure consciousness accessed through the epoch, as an absolutely autonomous domain of direct experience.
Absolutely autonomous, meaning it doesn't depend on anything else.
Exactly. It's seen as the ultimate source, the ground zero from which all meaning, all objectivity, and even the sense of the natural world itself is constituted. It's the ultimate foundation. This transcendental subjectivity is not merely the individual psychological I existing in the world, but the universal meaning constituting structures of consciousness that make any world, including the natural world studied by science, experienceable and intelligible in the first place. As the text puts it quite powerfully, nature is a field of relativities throughout, and it can be so because these are always in fact relative to an absolute, the spirit, i.e. transcendental subjectivity, which consequently is what sustains all the relativities. It's about grounding all knowledge and all experience in the absolute self-responsibility of the experiencing subject, revealing consciousness not as a thing in the world, but as the ultimate condition for the possibility of a world appearing at all.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't just another theory to add to the philosophical pile. It's presented as a call to radically rethink everything, to build our understanding of knowledge, reality, and ourselves from the most fundamental ground up, starting with our own experiencing consciousness, accessed through this rigorous method. It places an immense importance on the subject, not as an isolated individual ego trapped in its own head, but as the very locus where reality, in all its complexity and meaning, is constituted and revealed.
And crucially, this transcendental subjectivity, this field of pure consciousness, is not meant to be a speculative metaphysical construct inferred from afar. It's claimed to be an absolutely autonomous domain of direct experience, even if it remains hidden or inaccessible in our normal, everyday, natural attitude. The phenomenological reduction, the epichy, is presented as the methodical key, the gateway, to unlocking this domain and grasping its foundational role directly. It allows us to understand the deep, essential structures that make our world and our meaningful place within it possible in the first place. Hashtag outro.
Well, we've certainly been on quite a journey today on the deep dive, a real deep dive into the structure of experience itself. We've journeyed from the raw givenness of material things, meticulously unpacking how a seemingly simple coffee cup is actually constituted in our consciousness through shifting appearances, potential movements, and our own active perception. We move through the fascinating double-sided reality of the body, how it's both an object in the world and the living seat of our sensations and free will. We explore the unique, interwoven flow of psychic life, that stream of consciousness that defines our inner world, anchored somehow by the unwavering pure ego. From there, we delved into the profound realm of the personal ego, driven not by mere physical causality, but by internal motivation and intentionality, shaped by and shaping a shared, spiritualized surrounding world filled with meaning. And finally, we contemplated the really radical shift in perspective that phenomenology demands, moving from our unquestioning natural attitude to the illuminating and analytical phenomenological attitude using the epic, aiming to grasp the very essences of experience itself.
Indeed. We've seen how what initially appears as a simple thing out there is, in fact, revealed through this lens as a complex constitution. It involves sensations, kinesthetic movements, subjective interpretations, intersubjective agreements, cultural meanings, all ultimately rooted, phenomenology argues, in the absolute ground of transcendental consciousness. From the purely physicalistic thing of science, devoid of sense qualities, to the richly spiritualized object imbued with personal and cultural meaning, our reality is constantly being woven through the intricate fabric of our experience and intentionality. It's really a testament to the profound, active role of consciousness in shaping everything we know and experience.
So, thinking about all this, what does it all mean for you, the curious listener, as you go about your day after hearing this? If our entire world, from the simplest object you pick up to the most complex social structure you navigate, is not just out there waiting for you, but is actively constituted through your consciousness and the shared meanings we collectively create. What does that imply about the power, maybe even the responsibility, you hold in shaping the reality you perceive and the reality you share with others? How might consciously adopting even a little bit of that phenomenological attitude, even in small ways, maybe just pausing sometimes to reflect on how you are perceiving something, rather than just what you perceive, how might that transform your understanding of your own experiences and the world around you? Maybe take a moment to reflect on your usual natural attitude tomorrow as you interact with the world. And perhaps, just perhaps, you'll start to see the world, and maybe even yourself, with new, more reflective eyes.